Hello, everybody. My name is Adam, and I'm on an attempt to be the most prolific reviewer of all time. And to do that, I review books, movies, podcasts, plays, whatever I want. And I have a list of films that I think that I should watch and TV series that I think I should watch, but sometimes, you know, there is this sort of paralysis of choice because I can watch anything, right? So I was flipping through the channels yesterday, Christmas Eve, and I saw that Paddington, the movie from 2014, was playing, and it was just starting. So I sat down and I watched it, and I have to say, the first part of the movie, this is going to sound corny or trite, but it's one of those experiences that makes you really glad that you're alive. Or made me glad that I'm still alive and I can experience something like this because it was just so funny and wonderful and full of joy. The second half of the movie doesn't really live up to the promise of the first half of the movie, but I think it's okay. Uh, doesn't have to be perfect if the first part of the movie exists. And the part that I like about it is Paddington Bear, the character was created by Michael Bond in, I think, 1956 or something, 1952. And he was in this toy shop and he saw this toy bear, and it had like a tag, and the tag said, "Please take me home." And so Michael Bond was reminded of all of these Jewish refugee children that came to London during the war. And so he created this entire story about like Paddington being one of these sort of war refugee children's, because it was like children because it's 1956, so people would have had a memory of that. And there was like this backstory of Paddington's family being in Peru and then them sending him to London. And in the film, it's just so funny the way they do it because it's both kind of a tribute to that story and it's funny, but it's sort of commentary on colonialism as well, because there's this explorer who goes to darkest Peru, and I don't think that anybody has ever called Peru darkest Peru apart from this Paddington Bear series. So he goes there and he meets these two bears and he just starts explaining British culture to them in this like very, very stereotypically British way. So because they're intelligent bears, they start talking and they have their own language, but they start speaking English and they start like imitating all of these things that he's said about British culture. And they live in this Peruvian jungle, so it's kind of like their interpretation of British culture. So it's kind of like a cargo cult. And I don't know if you know what a cargo cult is, but a cargo cult is something that happened in the Second World War, where there were all of these like remote Pacific islands, and the Americans would drop off supplies, and they made like this religion that still exists to this day about like the Americans coming and dropping supplies and all of that stuff. And I think the modern version of the religion, I mean, people know about the war and all of that, and they understand that there were people, but like the traditions still continue. So I think the Paddington Bear family, that's not what their name is, but they kind of like they adopt all of these things in the same similar style. And the reason they adopt all of that stuff isn't quite clear, because the cargo cult is basically they want the supplies back, right? But the bears have just decided that English culture is superior. And then there is this environmental catastrophe. And so basically there is an uncle, an aunt, and a bear who doesn't have a name. He has a bear name, but he doesn't have a name at this point. And there's like an earthquake, and the uncle dies, and the old lady is too old to go to London, but because they've kind of mythologized London, so she's sending Paddington to London to find a family. And they basically, they don't know what London is really like, and they don't know what the British people are really like, but they have all of these kind of stereotypes that the explorer has told them. So Paddington is in Paddington Station. He's got like this little card, and he's looking for a home. And the first people who kind of, they don't really adopt him, but they take him away from the station are the Browns. There's like Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, Judy, and I forgot what the boy's name is, but they're like this family, uh, and they have different reactions to Paddington according to his personality. And there's a very funny thing, like the Mr. Brown says to Paddington, like, "What is your name?" And Paddington's like, "I don't have an English name. Would you like to know my bear name?" And the guy's like, "Sure." And he like he like says the bear name, and he's like, "Okay, Mr. Brown, you try." So Mr. Brown tries, and Paddington's like, "No, no, that's very offensive in bear language," which is great. It's very funny, very very funny. I also really love talking animal movies. So usually I like it when they're real animals, and the CGI kind of puts me off. But I think the CGI in this movie is pretty good. It's very cute. They worked really, really hard on it. And Paddington is such a. I think that the reason Paddington has survived as a beloved children's character is because he's not mean, but he's not especially brilliant either. But he just gets by on his good luck eventually. There's a scene where he wants to return this guy's wallet, and the guy ends up being a pickpocket, and Paddington's the hero in that. So he has a lot of adventures like that, which children really love because I think that children know that the world is not that the logic of the world is not the logic of stories. So they like the fact that this bear is constantly rewarded just for having a slightly good heart. And Paddington has this sort of like, I don't remember what they call it, but when he's disappointed in somebody, he just stares at them. And, he's a bear, so a bear staring at you is a bit uncomfortable. So he gets his way doing that. So the yeah, and the first part of the movie where he is adapting to all of these British customs, and he's trying to live in this home, and you know he he is coming to terms with the fact that his family has this view of the English and the British that doesn't really exist, you know? And he's in London, and he's learning about like what the people really are like. And the people are people, you know. They're they're good people, bad people, whatever. They're not like this mythologized version of the English. And I think that says a lot about how we perceive certain people in certain locations. And I was thinking about that when I was watching the movie because, there are the scenes of the Tower and London Eye and all of these like beautiful scenes in London. And I was thinking, like, why do people sort of romanticize London over a place like London, Ontario, which is near where I grew up? And I saw some comment where people were like, "Oh, London, Ontario is really shitty," and it's like, no, it's not. I mean, it's not London, England, but there's a nice river in the middle. There's lots of parks. There's more trees. Like it's called the Forest City. There's trees everywhere. So it's not a bad place, but it's not mythologized like London, England is. And, I think you could pick random places like that in North America. I think there are places in North America that are mythologized, like New York, Los Angeles, even Chicago. But, like, what about Montreal or Toronto or Vancouver? Like, those are places that have this unique sense of style as well, and sense of place and culture, but they're not mythologized because the British have this history of colonialism and imperialism behind them, right? So it makes London like the capital of feel sometimes like the capital of the world, even though probably it's New York or Beijing now. So I think it's a very, I mean, the movie doesn't make that comment directly, but I think it's a very subtle critique of sort of colonialism. Very, very subtle, but at its heart, it's just a very funny first half of the movie about this bear that has like a completely different interpretation of London culture because that's what he was taught. So it makes a lot of sense. The next part of the movie doesn't really work, but I'm going to tell you why in a moment. But I didn't tell you who the movie was starring. So it's directed by Paul King, and it stars Hugh Bonneville as the Paddington, and Sally Hawkins, Julie Waters, and Jim Broadbent, and eventually Nicole Kidman. And Nicole Kidman, not her acting per se, I think her acting is adequate, but Nicole Kidman is the reason the movie doesn't work as a movie. But the first part, as I said, brilliant, but the second part, it kind of falls apart. And the reason it falls apart is because they have this plot where the explorer who goes to Peru, nobody believes him about these intelligent bears, and the reason they don't believe him is because he doesn't have any taxidermied samples of these bears. So if they had a taxidermied sample of a bear, which I don't know why they would believe him then, because it's just a dead bear, doesn't mean that the bear is intelligent. So, but anyway, the explorer lost all of his like recognition, and he gets kicked out of this club, and his daughter wants revenge. So I guess as part of her plan to get revenge, she becomes a taxidermist, and she wants to kidnap Paddington, which is very convoluted revenge plan. Because as far as she knows, these bears live in Peru, right? And she is looking for the bear in London, right? Like, why? I mean, she's not even looking for the bear. She just happens to hear about the bear, and she's like, yes, I'll get my revenge now. So the revenge plot doesn't make a lot of sense, and the whole thing where she is like sort of this spy, and she's trying to like kidnap him, and Paddington gets blamed for the hole in the roof, and then they have this confrontation on the roof of some other building, and Paddington, climbs through this like shaft, which is like garbage shaft that they burn or something. I don't know. I don't think it works very well. And the reason it doesn't work very well is because it detracts from the setup in the beginning of the film. So the setup in the beginning of the film is just this sort of fish out of water tale. And I think that you could have just focused on that the producers of the movie, the writers of the movie, could have just focused on that tale. And they could have just been like, okay, we need to learn that Paddington has a good heart and he makes mistakes, but it's okay to make mistakes. And at the end of the movie, the Mr. Brown maybe learns to accept Paddington, and that's the end of the movie, right? But you have this sort of stupid spy plot, which kind of doesn't add anything to the movie and kind of derails the whole thing, because basically Paddington tells us that he gets to know the children and the wife and the husband, but you don't actually see him. I mean, you see like a shot and a line for each character. So that's not really development. That's just like, hey, here, I'm telling you, they are developed now, these characters, and then we can move on to the caper plot, which is not good. But I really enjoyed the first part of the movie. What did you think about it? If you've seen Paddington from 2014, let me know in the comments if you liked this adaptation of it, if you liked other adaptations of the character. Do you like the character of Paddington Bear? What do you think is the best children's character that you know in media? All right, if you like what I do, if you like my reviews, please subscribe. I'm looking for 200 subscribers by the end of January, and I think we have 189. So I think it's completely possible to do. And if you're following me, if you're listening on Spotify, because this is also an audio podcast, please follow me. Yeah. All right. Talk to you later. Bye bye.